Welcome to Realizing Resilience, a podcast from the Connecticut Women's Consortium. We're not behavioral health professionals, but we're your gateway to real conversations with the experts. Each episode, we'll delve into the vast landscape of mental health, from personal stories to expert insights. Together, we'll bridge the gap between clinical expertise and personal experiences, connecting with diverse voices and perspectives. Join us for insightful conversations that demystify the world of mental health.
Melissa Kascak is a certified personal and professional coach specializing in helping working mothers find balance and fulfillment. As the founder of Fit Yourself In, she uses evidence-based coaching to help women manage stress and overcome overwhelm. Melissa also serves as Director of Operations for Summit Success and Summit Press Publishers, overseeing strategic growth for both organizations. With a creative background and operational expertise, she blends structure and innovation in her work. A University of Connecticut graduate with a BFA, Melissa lives in Newtown, Connecticut with her husband and 2 sons, modeling work-life integration strategies.
Welcome back to Realizing Resilience. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Alana.
And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Melissa Kascak. Melissa, hello. Thank you so much. Thanks for talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You're coaching when you help other people, when you're connecting with others. It's all about finding balance and fulfillment. How do delegation and communication really fit into that, especially when talking about balancing work and personal life?
Okay, that's a great question. So pretty much everybody in life that I've come across feels overwhelmed and pulled in a lot of different directions. So to me, finding that balance when you're struggling with all the things that you're meant to be doing, that society puts all these pressures for us to wear so many different hats. I think communication and delegation go hand in hand. Communication to me is beneficial in all parts of your life. People can't read your mind, so you need to speak up for yourself and tell people what's going on and where you need help. And delegation is really just a fancy word for asking for help. So when you're looking to create more balance, I think it's essential to have that communication and to ask for help. So one of the examples that I like to give is when you're delegating and you're asking for help. So say if you're a working parent, you have a kid who's struggling with math homework, and every time you try to help them, you don't know what the heck you're doing and you're feeling guilty. So you're feeling guilty because you can't help your kid. And maybe you also feel guilty if you're like trying to help them with homework, but you're also kind of being pulled away for work stuff. That guilt, you can use that as a signal instead of beating yourself up about whatever it might be that you're feeling guilty about, that you're not at work or you're not helping your kid. Use that as a signal that something needs to shift here. This isn't working. I'm not able to be in 2 places at once because it's physically impossible. And it's not meant to be something where you're like, go down this spiral. It's meant to say, hey, something needs to shift. I need to create a boundary. I need to ask for help. So maybe you create a boundary by saying to work, hey, I really need to dedicate this time at the end of the day for, helping my son with homework. And, I'm not available from 4 to 5 or whatever it is. I'll check emails again at the end of the day. Or maybe you need to ask the teenager up the street who's really good at math to help your kid, because they might be able to if you're asking for that help, you're delegating that task because it's something that you're not strong with. So it's sort of that way of finding something is not right and I need to make a shift here. So to me, that's just kind of a nutshell of where communication and delegation can sort of go hand in hand and to help you find that balance, because you can't do everything for everybody.
I love the idea of guilt as an indicator, because if you don't utilize it somehow or act on it, which it's an emotion where there's not a lot to act on, often you can kind of just sit in it. I think that's just such a nice way of reframing it to figure out what that means instead of just feeling sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, because that doesn't help anything. Just feeling guilty is, it's a horrible feeling anyway. So instead of sitting in it and feeling horrible about something, you can use it as, I'm going to use this as a catalyst to find out how I can change this because I don't like feeling like this. I feel like it's a really powerful thing. When I realized that, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Because it's so helpful to think of it as a signal instead of just, this sucks.
So as you alluded to, and as I think we all know by virtue of being human, delegation and communication are at play in everything, but specifically for behavioral health professionals and leaders in that field, how are these aspects that can kind of help enhance the trust and collaboration in their work?
So I think for me, I mean, I'm not necessarily a behavioral health specialist as, somebody who's like a counselor or a therapist. But in my estimation, I feel a lot of those people tend to have their own practice and they kind of work on their own. They're not necessarily part of like a big conglomerate. So in that instance, they might feel like they're kind of on an island and they don't have a lot of people to say, hey, can you file this for me? Or can you help me with that spreadsheet? They kind of have to do it all themselves. So in that instance, that can be difficult because who are they going to ask for help? That's when it's important to kind of think of how can I maybe use technology to help me? Maybe you can ask for, a virtual assistant to step in and help you with scheduling or filing or, paperwork and that kind of thing. It's important to understand that communication also takes a big hand, whether or not you're delegating to, somebody new, or if you are part of a larger company for something like a behavioral health specialist, you need to have that trust that the privacy is going to be continued to be, upheld. So communication is definitely key for that because you need to know that you're going to trust whoever you're asking, hey, this is this person's file. It's, the HIPAA and all those kinds of things need to be taken care of. So that's something that I think definitely is something that probably limits people because they feel like, well, I can't just have anybody looking at these things. But if you are communicating in a proper way and you can build that trust, start with something smaller, and then you can build upon that trust and say, okay, now I know that that you understand this privacy is so important, then you can start to delegate more tasks that have a little bit more of that kind of element to them. And I think it's part of delegation. A lot of times the people who go into those fields are like, I came into this because I want to help people, not because I want to ask other people for help. So I think that might be a limitation that they have as well. And it's harder for them to overcome some of those limitations that we put on ourselves of, it's easier if I just do it myself, or, I have to have control. And those kinds of things probably come forward a lot more for people in that field because they do feel like I'm a caregiver. I don't need help. It's like the shoemaker's children kind of thing. But those people still do need to have help because that way they can be in their highest and best use of their time and serve their clients in a better way because they're not taking away time from their clients by, doing the paperwork or doing the spreadsheets or doing the taxes, whatever it might be. They can ask others who are better suited to those tasks.
I also think it's not only communication with others or with clients, with whatever, but I also think with yourself too. Do I feel like I'm dedicating myself to my client when they walk in the door?
Mm-hmm.
Do I think I'm overwhelmed or could I take on another client if someone had come up, like knowing where your limits are as
Right.
well. I mean, you can't always control it because sometimes you're in an organization where they just keep giving you people to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think knowing when you're at your capacity is important as well.
For sure. Yeah, and that's definitely something, setting those boundaries. That's a huge, boundaries and delegation go hand in hand because once you discover what your boundaries are, then you can say, all right, this is where I need to start asking for help and start taking some things off of my plate because it is too much and I can't pour from an empty pitcher. So, like you said, finding those limitations is so vital because it helps you to figure out where am I going to find those lines.
In your upcoming training that you have with us, The Art of Delegation on May 6th, can you walk us through how lectures, group activity, all of those things will be put together for participants in putting delegation skills into action?
So people learn better by doing, and there's a lot of interaction in the workshop. One of the things that we'll talk about is the limitations that people have when they're trying to delegate. Sometimes they don't realize the limitations that they have upon themselves, such as, it's easier if I just do it myself, or they want to have control. And we'll go through some of those things and sort of break out a little bit and sort of dig in a little bit and have people talk to one another about in, little groups about what are their limitations, where are they seeing themselves, really thinking about it. And then we'll talk about, actually, one of the things that I'm going to talk about is the generation gap that has started to sort of crop up a little bit more within this new group of people who are coming into the workforce. These people that are a little bit younger and they've grown up with technology as their backdrop. for their entire lives. And it's a very different perception of the way the world works. And it's something that it's a little bit of a difficult bridge for people to gap because of the fact that there are still some people at the end of their careers who still have a lot of life to give to their careers, but they didn't grow up with the same perspective and the same perceptions of the way things work. So part of what we're going to discuss at the workshop is how to bridge that gap and how to effectively communicate and how to effectively make sure that everyone's working at their top capacity and their top efficiency, and utilizing delegation in a way that everybody can get on board with, because some people have different ways of looking at things, and you can use that as a benefit instead of a detriment, where sometimes people don't see eye to eye because of the difference in the generations. So that's something that we're going to definitely delve into and workshop a little bit through breakout sessions, which is pretty exciting because I think that's something that sometimes people don't realize is one of the limitations. And then we're going to also talk about ways to effectively delegate and some different tips and tools that you can walk away with, ways that you can actually communicate, specifically how to communicate your exact plan, and some different tips about making sure that you're being very clear about what you want to happen when you're delegating something, because sometimes people think, I do it this way, so that's how they're going to do it, but that's not always the way that it's going to work. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. So throughout the workshop, there will be different ways to break out and work one-on-one or in little groups. It is easier to learn when you are bouncing ideas off of somebody or getting immediate feedback instead of just thinking about it. And when you get home, you're like, I'll get to it, if you're just learning something. But actually doing hands-on and working together with somebody is definitely a much more efficient way to bring the learning home.
Sounds great. And I love that you're approaching this from a perspective of you don't have to be a person necessarily in like a leadership role in an organization. Because I think when you hear the word delegation, you think if I work alone, that doesn't apply to me.
Mm.
So I love that not only will you be able to experience it in real time, like what that might look like, but that it can also be tailored to different aspects of this profession or of this work.
Mm-hmm. And, a lot of what I talk about with my clients is how to find that balance of work and life at home, because everybody has a home life, hopefully. Some people are married to their jobs, but you want to have that work-life balance. And as a working mom myself, and that's, my specialty for my clients, but these kinds of principles apply to everyone, but especially, trying to find that balance, because it is hard sometimes to say, well, where does work stop and home begin? And if those lines are blurred, it's very difficult to feel balanced. So that's part of what we'll talk about as well.
I feel like the big thing about this is that you have to be there to truly know that this is all really like we could ask you any questions about
Mm.
communication or delegation, but really it's like putting it into practice is really what drives it home.
Yes.
So I'm bummed I'm not going to be here for that day. I want to be there so bad. I think it'd be great. I'm going to be on my honeymoon, so I won't be able to
Oh.
go. Yeah, I'll be delegating a few different things while I'm there, but I think this is really beneficial not only for people's professional work, but that can be applied personally as well.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
not only just delegating your own work, but also helping your clients delegate in their daily life and how communication can help them as well. Like if you can practice it, you can also preach it.
Right, exactly. And one of the things to remember too is, delegation is a work in progress, and you have to refine it and retool it all the time. It's not like a one and done, but it's building that foundation of, I know what I need to do and the things that I need to look at in order to be successful, because you will need to retool and rejigger things as you're going along. Especially, as new team members come in, or as your kids get older, or as different things shift, you still have that same bedrock of where I need to, look at what's going to happen for me to feel like I'm not going crazy with all the things I'm trying to do, So it's building those principles of the foundation that will help you to go through further for the rest of your life to keep on communicating and delegating.
Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that you feel like would be important for people to know?
Mostly, what I just said about the fact that it's something to remember is that we have to be gentle with ourselves and remember that nobody's going to get this perfect, and it is a work in progress. So, just getting that foundation is helpful, but you have to remember that you're not perfect and it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to screw up and you're going to forget something. And, even if you're delegating, you're still, spinning a lot of plates. So it's okay if you make a mistake. And that's okay. Like, that's something to remember. So that's something that we'll talk about too at the workshop.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Links will be in the description to learn more about Melissa and her business Fit Yourself In, and sign up for her training, The Art of Delegation, on May 6th. Check out our links below to keep up with us at the Connecticut Women's Consortium. Thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.